And when I finished this book, I was like, wow, the things these people did for what they believed in, it was so inspiring and incredible, the lengths they went to and the amount of time they worked at trying to achieve the change that they wanted to achieve. And I was just thinking to myself, I have such a privileged life and every, opportunity available to myself compared to these people. And I can't even ask for a vegan option. I can't even say, no, I don't eat that to somebody. I can't just not have ice cream and allow the craving to pass. Seriously? Kia ora everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Good You Can Do podcast. I'm so excited to be starting this finally. I have been meaning to do this for such a long time and it feels so good to finally be getting started. I wanted to publish an introductory episode first up, just setting out the podcast concept and going over what I'm aiming to do here. And then I thought we could just chat for a little bit. To introduce myself briefly, my name is Emma. I'm 29 years old. I live in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, also known as Wellington, New Zealand, with my husband and our cat. And we are those people everyone hates who dote on their companion animal to what some would say is an excessive degree. I am a very average person basically, but to provide some extra details, I'm dyspraxic, I'm bisexual, I work as a public servant, I've struggled with anxiety and depression for many years, and I've been vegan for just over 2 years. So for the past 2 or 3 years, I have wanted to start a podcast, and I also wanted to get more involved in the vegan community and vegan activism, so it seemed pretty obvious to combine those two things. I've also wanted to start a YouTube channel. I actually used to have a YouTube channel years ago. I started doing beauty content and also booktube content back in 2012, and then in 2015 I had another channel where I actually did what was called anti-SJW content. I only did that channel for about a year, but it was having some decent growth and I could absolutely see that it could have gotten big if I had wanted to continue with it and really lean into all of those kinds of anti-SJW viewpoints, because there's obviously such a market for example, female creators who criticize feminism. And that whole thing is obviously something that I completely moved away from. So I would love to actually do a future episode on how and why I did that. But recently I've been wanting to start another channel with more of a focus on veganism and those kinds of things. The only problem is that I just do not have the setup technologically for that right now, and while that's definitely something I want to work on, podcasting is a lot easier to get started with, so I figured I shouldn't wait for the YouTube channel to be up and running and I can start both of them at once. I should get straight into the podcast, and also I think that the kind of content that I would choose to put in a YouTube video versus a podcast will be so different. Podcasts are a great format for really in-depth conversations, and then YouTube I think will be good for lighter things like trying all these new vegan ice cream flavors, or I tried this vegan meal delivery service for a week. So yeah, it's going to be, I think, different content that eventually will be up on both platforms that will kind of complement each other, but yeah, be different. So a couple of years ago, my husband and I actually started a podcast together, mainly just as a fun thing for us to do together. We kind of discussed current events and just various different subjects that interested us, and it was a really fun thing to do, and we could have kept having fun doing it, but he started university, and no, he's not a lot younger than me, not that there'd necessarily be anything wrong with that, but he is my age, but he didn't go to university at the typical age, after high school. So nowadays he just does not have time to research anything other than what he has to for school. So that ended pretty quickly. One thing that held me back from creating this podcast for a little while was my thought that, like, oh my god, you cannot do a podcast alone, you have to have a co-host, I thought. But more recently, I've been listening to several podcasts that I really enjoy that are solo pods or are predominantly solo pods. And I plan to do a lot of interview podcasts and like guest co-host podcasts. That took me so many tries to say, by the way, but we finally got it. Guest co-host. So it won't always just be my voice that's, blathering on. And I have a list of people that I want to interview, and some of those people I'm really confident about approaching and asking to chat to, and others I am absolutely terrified of approaching and may never approach. We'll see how this goes, I guess. But yeah, if you have anyone that you'd like to hear an interview with on a show like this, then let me know, because I will add them to the list if they're not on there. So, why the name Good You Can Do? Well, to begin with, while I knew I wanted veganism to be a big part of the podcast, I didn't want to box myself in by calling it like the vegan something, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I didn't want it to seem like I see myself as some kind of arbiter of veganism, because I'm not a perfect vegan, and I also have some views related to veganism that I know that some other vegans would think mean that I'm actually not vegan. And I'm fine with them viewing those issues differently to me, but to actually put vegan in the name of the podcast kind of seems to just be inviting a level of critique of my way of defining and doing veganism that I don't have time for. If somebody doesn't want to apply that label to me, then that doesn't particularly concern me. I'm just trying to live my life while avoiding contributing to the use and exploitation of animals as best as I can. And one of the things that I find most interesting about discussing the topic of veganism is those issues that fall into the grey areas. And on many of those issues, I have an opinion, but it's not like I think, I'm 100% sure in every case that my opinion is right. That it's just my opinion. And I find it really interesting to discuss why that's my opinion, but also to hear why people have different opinions on those issues and talk things through. And so, yeah, I didn't want it to seem like I had all the answers to how to be the perfect vegan. I want there to be more of a focus on, let's talk about things and let's see what we come out thinking, let's see what we can learn, and it to be about me learning alongside whoever's listening, rather than like, I'm going to tell you what you should do to be the best vegan in the world, because that's not who I am. The other reason I didn't want to put vegan in the name was that I have so many other things that I want to discuss as well, and I wanted to feel free to do that as often as I want, as often as a topic comes up that I feel is going to be relevant or interesting, without feeling like I was massively deviating from, the purpose of the podcast, the brand, the niche, whatever. So I thought, let's try to have something that's more open. So I was watching a video from the YouTuber Shelbizzle, and every time I say that, it sounds wrong in my head. Like, to me, when I see her name on YouTube, it looks like it should be Shelbizzly to me. But whenever I hear her say it, she says Shelbizzly. She says Shelbizzle. See, I still get confused. But yeah, every time I hear her say it, she seems to say Shelbizzle, and I think we should go with what people say their names are pronounced like, not like it's even her real name, but you know what I mean. And yeah, I highly recommend checking out her channel. She has, I'll put in the notes, the correct spelling of it and the correct URL, but she has some excellent content on sustainable living, and she has this quote that she says at the end of every one of her videos that I absolutely adore. And I remember the first time I heard it thinking, wow, that has really captured how I've been thinking that I should be trying to live. It is, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. So I thought it might be nice to snip part of the end off there and be good you can do, because that bit right there encapsulates what I want this podcast to be, which is a place where someone like me, an average person who, doesn't have a particular skill or talent. I'm not going to contribute to the world by making a medical breakthrough that helps us cure cancer, but someone who's trying to do the best that she can in her own small way. And I wanted to have a space where someone like me can just sort of talk things through with people and try to figure out alongside whoever's listening how we can do the most good that we can while also enjoying and feeling satisfied with our lives. I don't want it to be about me saying like I'm doing so amazing and I'm living the most ethical life possible, because I absolutely am not. It's going to be about me sharing my thoughts, hearing yours, having a conversation, and hopefully all of us learning something and feeling more educated and more supported to make whatever improvements we can. I know I have lots and lots to do. It could be getting involved in different forms of activism. It could be making more ethical purchasing decisions. It could be having a better understanding of an issue, just something as simple as that. Or, an understanding of a different perspective on an issue. And similarly to what I was saying about the vegan label and the judgment that can come with that, of people saying you're not a good enough vegan, I also did have worry about this name still. Obviously I decided to get over it and go with it, but yeah, I definitely have had the worry that having this name and having this kind of concept, you're going to get people, if you ever get anyone listening at all, obviously, you're going to get people who are like, oh, here are all the things that you're doing that are harmful, or here are all the things that are good that you're not doing. So you're not doing the most good you can do. You're not leading the most ethical life you could lead. And I was just like, I have to get over that, because that's always going to be the case, essentially. There's always going to be, more a person could do, pretty much. And yeah, this isn't about being perfect. This is about trying to be better in a way that is sustainable for me and for anyone listening in terms of what they choose to do with their life. So that's what we decided to go with. So yeah, there's going to be definitely a focus on animal rights, vegan and sustainable lifestyle stuff, but there's also lots of room to discuss other topics, things like social justice, mental health, politics a little bit, and so much more, anything that pertains to how we can make the world a little bit of a better place, or how others are doing so, or even occasionally how they're making it worse and how we should respond to that. I have a huge list of future episode topics that I want to do, and I know more are going to come to mind as undoubtedly good, bad, and just ethically confusing things continue to happen in the world. So now, if you'd like, you can stop listening and wait for the next episode. I'm going to attempt to do them at least weekly, and if you want, you can stay, and I will do the cliched vegan introduction thing and tell you how, when, and why I became vegan, but I will give a much more detailed version of the story than what I would do if I actually met someone in real life and had to sum it up in 30 seconds. So, I've been one of those people that loved and felt drawn to animals since I was a young child, and that continued throughout my whole life, but I also ate meat and dairy my whole life, like most of us, I guess. I didn't eat eggs other than in baking, as I was allergic to them as a toddler, and then I grew out of that, but since then they always just seemed really gross to me anyway. So I avoided those, but I ate all the other stuff, despite, like most people, being totally against all of the things that I did view as animal cruelty. And then in the early years of high school, I had a close friend that went, I actually can't remember if they went vegetarian or vegan, but one of them, and that was the first time that I really thought even the tiniest bit about animal agriculture. And I was like, I think she's right actually. The factory farming thing we're doing is really weird. It's pretty creepy, and it's obviously not good for the animals. And I remember mentioning to my dad once that this friend was vegetarian, and I said, yeah, I think, maybe back in the day when you had to hunt for meat, or someone had a little farm and they kept the animals that they needed to feed their own family or some neighbouring families, that was fine maybe, but this industrialised way of doing things is really creepy. And I remember him being kind of like, yeah, but we couldn't provide food for everyone in the world now by doing things that way, because it would just, use so much more land, and that's the systems that we have now. It just wouldn't work. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And what I had no understanding of at the time was that while that is true, we could, however, feed everyone on a plant-based diet. So, the solution wasn't just be like, oh, well, I guess we just have to do all this horrible stuff to animals. The solution was obviously we should just not eat animals. But anyway, I kind of didn't think about it anymore. I was like, that's cool that this friend is vegetarian, but I never felt like I was obligated to go vegetarian, or that me eating animals conflicted with being an animal lover, or even just a person that doesn't mistreat others whether I like them or not in any significant way. So anyway, time goes on and I leave school, and as I eventually begin renting my own apartment and doing all of my own cooking, I find that I do gravitate towards mainly cooking vegetarian meals because I hated cutting up meat. There was just something so gross about it to me. I was very much that person that, I knew these products came from animals, of course, because sometimes I would see pigs' heads or feet or whole pigs being roasted, things like that. But I always found that style of food really off-putting. I didn't even like eating chicken drumsticks or anything that was presented with a bone present, or especially that I had to pick up by the bone to eat. I loved the taste of the skin of KFC, but I would always go for the popcorn chicken instead of the pieces with bones. So I was the type that knew where these things came from and definitely wanted the fact to be in the back of my mind where I wouldn't notice it. I completely avoided thinking about these animals as individuals that were suffering. So fast forward a few more years, and near the end of 2015, I find myself in hospital experiencing severe abdominal pain. And eventually, after some tests and questioning me, they tell me I have gallstones and I may need to have surgery to remove my gallbladder in the near future. Now, while I say that I was predominantly cooking vegetarian meals in the apartment, over time, due to a combination of factors that I won't get into here, other than to give the keywords of depression and rats, I eventually stopped cooking much at all, mainly ordering pizzas or making ready meals, which usually weren't vegetarian, or just eating huge bags of tortilla chips. Since leaving high school, I have gained over 30 kgs, and that's not something that just, happened and that's how my body is as an adult, which would be fine. It's something that happened because I was binge eating on a regular basis and making myself feel ill to the extent that it culminated in this trip to the hospital. For whatever reason, I've always been absolutely terrified of the concept of myself having surgery. Just the thought of being under anesthesia and being out for a period of time and having my body opened up, or people poking instruments into my body, was just something that I was desperate to avoid. So I started doing medical research on the internet, which, as we know, can be a dangerous path. And in this case, while I did come across a lot of information that seemed dodgy about potions, essentially, that you could mix and drink that would apparently break down the stones so you could pass them, which I never dared to do, I found a lot of people, doctors and just people who had experienced these problems themselves, recommending cutting back on or cutting out meat and dairy. So I thought, oh, that's something that I could actually do. I had moved into a new apartment at this point and I was getting back into cooking a little bit, and it was something I knew I wanted to do more of. So I decided that for the next few weeks I was going to try and eat a vegan diet, and a very bland vegan diet, because that was recommended for a time as well. And then after that, I figured I could just be vegetarian. Now, at this time, I really wasn't very aware of veganism as a concept. I knew the basic concept that it was like being vegetarian, but that you also didn't have dairy and eggs, and also that it included things like not buying leather or cosmetics that had animal-derived ingredients. And I knew that vegans did this for reasons of animal rights, but I didn't know all the reasoning behind why each specific product was being boycotted. And I was also a person that was I was very big into new atheism at a certain stage, and I say that because it illustrates what my mindset on things is. I didn't like the idea of an ideology that kind of had a principle behind it that you just sort of applied to everything. So don't use anything that comes from animals, for example. So even when I started learning about things, I thought, okay, I'm not going to be vegan because that seems like a blanket philosophical based reason that may not make sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at every animal product that we use, and I'm going to do research into how these items are produced. And if what I find out I'm not okay with, and that's not a thing I want to be putting money into, then I will boycott that product. And if I'm okay with it, I won't. I thought it's going to be very rational. I'm going to take everything on a case-by-case basis. And then through doing that, I was like, oh, it's all bad. It's all bad. There's none of it that I'm okay with. So that's kind of how that happened. I also had seen some vegans on Instagram before, and they all seemed to be these incredibly fit, like, Insta models who did a lot of yoga and ate massive salad bowls piled with avocado. And, you know, that's the image of veganism that was in my brain. And as much as I wanted to be healthier, I had no desire to be that healthy. I was like, cool, like I definitely should be having some more salads in my diet, but I also am not gonna like never have pasta or never have a big bowl of curry or never have nachos or whatever like these people seem to be like. So yeah, after a couple of weeks of eating plain toast and some very bland salads, I was ready to start eating a more normal vegetarian diet, but I needed some recipe ideas. So I went searching for these on the internet, and I came across vegan YouTube channels and the vegan subreddit, which obviously linked me into a lot of other content. And so as well as finding recipes, I found information about the animal agriculture industries. And, you know, like I was mentioning before, I very quickly realized like these vegans are right. All this stuff is really bad. And the essential concept of veganism, I realized, was 100% the way we should go. But I still didn't go vegan at that point. I stayed lurking in these communities, picking up more information all the time, but I didn't have the confidence yet to put it all into practice in my own life. For 3 years, I was a vegetarian, and I would eat vegan whenever it was absolutely no extra effort to do so. So what I mean by that is, if I wanted to make a pizza and the regular supermarket had vegan cheese for pizza in store, you know, I bought that, I tried it, I was fine with it, I thought it tasted fine. So I kept buying it whenever I wanted to have pizza. But if I wanted to make a salad with feta cheese, well, there was no alternative for that available. So I would buy the feta. The only vegan ice creams in the supermarkets back at that time were coconut-based ones, which I tried and I really did not like. So if I got a craving for ice cream, I would just have dairy ice cream. I totally lacked confidence at this time to tell anyone that I wanted vegan options. And I part of this early on was a feeling that I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay vegan if I do go vegan. And so how embarrassing would it be to like tell everyone in my family I'm going vegan for ethical reasons, and then sometime later be like, no, actually, I'm not vegan anymore. I could not have that. So I needed to know that I was solid and I was going to be able to stick to this before I would be like, don't serve me, you know, any dairy anymore. All of these things. So I couldn't tell anyone, like my family or people in restaurants, that I wanted vegan options. So, you know, if I went out to eat and there was a vegan option labelled as such, then that's what I'd order. But I would never dare to ask someone if something that wasn't labelled vegan could be made vegan. Like, I would never say, like, oh, can you just take, you know, this away? Or, I mean, sometimes I would ask for things to be taken away, because I do that anyway for things I don't like cucumber and avocado I hate. And I'll often be like, could I please have this burrito bowl but without the avocado, which everyone thinks is super strange, but there you go. Other times I've been like, can I always have this banh mi without cucumber, which again, people are like, that's one of the ingredients, it's always in banh mi, what are you talking about? But I'm just like, I just want a baguette with some really nicely marinated tofu in it and some like whatever, you know, sauce there is. I don't want cucumber. But anyway, like I would never be like, what is the sauce made out of? Is there dairy in it or is there not? Is there egg in this? Like I would never ask those kinds of questions. And, you know, God forbid I would ask someone if they could do something off menu. I wouldn't tell people at work that I wanted something vegan, so I would just eat a slice of whatever cake was brought in for people's birthdays, and if, you know, there was cheese at a morning tea or something, I would have a bit of it. So, you know, these years go on and I'm gradually trying more vegan options, and the ones I like I keep eating, and gradually, you know, getting very slowly more in that direction, but it's still, the confidence is just absolutely not there. So, you know, if it ever involves imposing anything on anyone in any slight degree, then I won't do it. Then sometime in November 2018, I read a book, and I'm going to do an entire episode discussing this book in depth in the future, because it's not a book you would expect. It's not even about veganism at all, but it does have so many insights that could be applied to any movement to try and bring about social change. The vegan movement, you know, just being one of them. And when I finished this book, I was like, wow, the things these people did for what they believed in, it was so inspiring and incredible. The lengths they went to and the amount of time they worked at trying to achieve the change that they wanted to achieve. And I was just thinking to myself, I have such a privileged life and every, you know, opportunity available to myself compared to these people. And I can't even ask for a vegan option. I can't even say, like, no, I don't eat that to somebody. I can't just not have ice cream and allow the craving to pass. Seriously? So from that point on, I felt like I had to go vegan. Like, I had to genuinely try and live according to my values. And I also, another thing that I really acknowledged was that it was a lot easier for me to go vegan than it would be for a lot of people. And that's something I always try to remember when I'm talking to people. Because, you know, I didn't come from a family where, like, we ate meat with every meal, but it wasn't really important to us that we ate meat in any kind of cultural sense. Like, some families that I know, like thinking of my husband's family, for example, the meat that they eat is more meaty meat. So by that I mean, like, me and my mum, when I was growing up, would have, like, pieces of chicken and some kind of sauce in a pasta, or like a chicken breast and some vegetables, those kinds of things. And so it was just like a part of the meal, and it was there for protein because, you know, my mum didn't think that you could get a decent amount of protein from plant food, so the chicken was just kind of there as a default protein. And yeah, I mean, sometimes would have a stir fry with like beef strips through it, but yeah, it was never like about the meat. Whereas my husband's family, for example, he would have these meals where like the meat was a central part of it, and it was more things like a rack of lamb, or, you know, those kinds of things, with the focus is much more on the meat itself, and it's a much kind of bigger part of the meal. And, you know, I also didn't have like family that hunted. I also, like I said, I cooked a lot of vegetarian meals, so it was kind of easy for me to transition them to being vegan, or to go to always having meals that didn't have meat in them. And I was like, I'm a woman, so I don't receive a lot of the messaging that men do in our society about like meat making you manly, or vegans. And sorry, that's my cat just jumping up to the microphone. Hi, baby. I'm just gonna let her, you know, sniff around. No, being vegetarian or vegan being for like soy boys and all of those kinds of things. So that's something. I also was able to afford like the vegan ice creams that did start coming out, and, you know, Beyond Burgers and all of those kinds of things, and like vegan chicken nuggets and all of that good stuff. And like, while I realized that vegan meals can be incredibly cheap, it can be a really cheap way to eat, being able to have meat like burger patties and chicken nuggets and all of those things, it really did make it seem more appealing and more attainable to me in the beginning. So yeah, while it can be very cheap, I think knowing that you can have those things does make it seem a lot easier than it would otherwise. I was like, okay, this would be so easy for me to do, really, relatively speaking. So yeah, I can not have feta in my salad. I can not have ice cream. I need to just do it, I figured. So yeah, I'm definitely not proud of having taken so long to start doing that, but that is my real journey. And I really want to help anyone that I can to gain the confidence and drive and information that I lacked, so that they can start living out their values a lot sooner than I did. So I think that's enough for this little intro episode. I will be back soon with the first of the real episodes, and I can't wait. All my social media links are in the description below. I'm going to have to take a photo, you guys. My cat is now stretched out along behind my laptop, and it's so adorable, you guys. So I will put that on. I'm going to probably make a podcast website, so I'll put that up there for you. So do let me know. I will leave all my social media links in the description below, what topics you would like to hear me cover in the future. If it's not something that's on my list, I will add it, and if it is, I will make it more of a priority. Enjoy the rest of your day, try to do some good, and let's chat again soon. I'm not going to be able to take the photo now because she's now started trying to bite the top of the screen. So I better say goodbye and put a stop to that. See you in the next episode. Bye guys.